Hi, my name is Ethen Refutation. I'll be responding to the claim, modern technology has a significantly negative effect on every person's physical health. My opponent's secondary claims were, modern technology emits dangerous proximity radiation, modern technology can alter molecular abilities, there are no incentives for big tech companies to consider the health of the people, the effect based on law. I will be responding to the first claim, modern technology emits dangerous proximity radiation. The American Cancer Society states, first, the energy level of radio frequency waves, RF, is relatively low, especially when compared with the types of radiation that are known to increase cancer risks, such as gamma rays, X-rays, and ultraviolet light. Second, RF waves have long wavelengths which can only be concentrated to about an inch or two in size. This makes it unlikely that the energy could be concentrated enough to affect individual cells in the body. Third, levels of energy from RF waves near cell phone towers are not significantly different from the background levels of RF radiation in urban areas from other sources, such as radio and television broadcasting stations. Another point that I have in support of this is that technology does not emit dangerous radiation within its proximity. The American Cancer Society has also stated, at ground level near typical cellular base stations, the amount of RF energy is thousands of times less than the limits for safe exposure set by the U.S. Federal Communication, or the FCC, and other regulatory authorities. In one large study, British researchers compared a group of more than 1,000 families of young children with cancer against a similar group of families of children without cancer. They found no link between a mother's exposure to the towers during pregnancy, based on the distance from the home to the nearest tower and the amount of energy given off by nearby towers, and the risk of early childhood cancer. I will be responding to her second supporting claim, modern technology can alter molecular abilities. As stated by the National Cancer Institute, the Federal Communications Commission concludes that currently no scientific evidence establishes a definite link between wireless device use and cancer and or other illnesses. In a 2015 study, the European Commission Scientific Committee on Emerging and Newly Identified Health Risks concluded that, overall, the epidemiologic studies on cell phone radio frequency electromagnetic radiation exposure do not show an increased risk of brain tumors or other cancers of the head and neck region. To conclude, there is technology that does affect our bodies and produce some type of cancer. However, the evidence provided by my opponent was incorrect and was used towards technology that produces some type of radiation, but not that would produce cancer. Thank you.
All right, well, you labeled the advocate's claims. You decide to only respond to the first two, which is perfectly fine. If the first two are the ones where the link is provided, then that makes the most sense, and then the third one probably isn't particularly relevant. You signpost things pretty clearly as you're going along. Let me point out the thing that I think that you do really well. You present good counter evidence and counter claims on some of these points. You've got information from the American Cancer Society, the National Cancer Institute, European studies, British research, and the FDA, all suggesting that there isn't a particular link to any particular harms there. So I think you've got good evidence for your counter claims here. There's not any discussion of what the evidence was from the advocate. You don't get any contrast. You might have very good evidence, but if their evidence was equally good, how am I supposed to choose and decide which one to believe? What you want to do is you want to point out the insufficiency of their evidence in contrast to yours. All right, so what proof did they use? I don't remember. You're the one who watched the speech more often and studied it a little bit more, and that's one of the things that you want to point out. You want to point out and said, well, their evidence of risk simply was a speculative piece of testimony from a scientist who talked about how in the laboratory we saw some increased risk here. But I've got epidemiological research that shows that there has been no impact from hundreds of thousands of exposures to people having this. So we've got somebody in a lab who sees some relationship with a specialized exposure versus the kind of research that I'm using, which I think is much more reliable. You should trust the conclusions here. Plus, we have multiple sources that have found no relationship here. And they're not industry sources like the advocate's talking about. The National Cancer Institute, the American Cancer Society are not industry groups that are defending their use of these kinds of things. They are independent medical groups that are making this assessment. A government group that is independent, the FDA, has made the same kind of assessment. British researchers and European researchers have made the same kind of assessment. And what's the evidence from the other side? So you didn't need to do a little bit more contrasting in the argument to make your argument work a little bit better. You don't tell us whether or not there's sufficient grounds on their side. You simply present the grounds on your side. So it's more rebuttal argument than it is refutation. It's a good rebuttal argument, but what the saying is about putting all your eggs in one basket. I think you want to have a diversity of responses, and that's basically what's missing here. All right, thank you.